Hi, welcome to the Sweet Slumber Podcast, the good, the bad, and the sleep deprived. I am your host, Meredith Bruff. I'm a wife, a mother of 5, a childcare expert, and a sleep coach. I'm here to teach you the most effective sleep advice for infants and young children. With my guidance, sleep will become something that you look forward to again, and you will feel rested. I believe that motherhood is the most important and demanding role that we have, but the challenges and accomplishments that go along with it go unnoticed frequently. We are going to talk openly about these things so that we can draw strength and compassion from each other. I will share my perspective as a seasoned mother and help you experience more fulfillment.
Welcome, everyone. I'm so excited to be here today with a guest. It's going to be really wonderful for you to get to know her and learn from her. We all have lots of experience and life lessons to share, so this is really exciting. This is my friend Amanda Bennett, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about her. Hi, Amanda. We'll let everyone
Hello.
hear.
Hello.
Thank you. Before becoming a mother, Amanda spent over 12 years helping prominent nonprofit organizations raise millions of dollars for worthy causes. That is amazing. Hopefully you'll tell us more about that. She's a mother of 2 young children, which I'm sure encompasses much of her life. And somehow in her day-to-day, she finds time to write, record a podcast called Gotcha Mama. And she spends time with her friends, and also she dances. That's so cool. I love it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I have like this admiration for dancers. Like it's the one thing I always wished I could have learned. So today we're going to hear Amanda's story about becoming a mother and the experiences that led her to create her podcast. So hopefully she'll tell us about all of this, about the podcast, about this amazing job that she spent so much of her time pursuing. And you don't have to talk about it much, but it's just really neat. So can you tell us a little bit about having a first child and that experience of becoming a mother?
Yeah. So I'm happy to share about
I know, I should have.
too. And that actually it's part of my motherhood journey because that was a big part of who I was before I became a mom. And we've talked before about this. It's a huge area of challenge for moms a lot of times, that transition into motherhood and that identity shift and having to reprioritize your life and trying to figure out who you are as a mom now. That was a huge deal for me, especially coming from a profession where I had been in there for 12 years. I felt really comfortable doing what I was doing. I had a master's degree. I was in a full-time job for this long, and you just get really comfortable and you get confident because this is what I'm good at. And of course, when you become a mom, you can't practice for that really. Like you can read all the books, you can talk to friends, but you have never had your child until that moment. And so there's a huge learning curve. And that was a big part of what kind of propelled me into this phase of life where I'm doing the podcast and I am at home with my kids, and I have a almost 5-year-old and a 9-month-old. And there's a lot of things, I've never been at this place in my life before. And that's your motherhood journey. There's so much to learn every day. And that's one thing that I enjoy about it, but it's also a huge challenge. And it's very different than working a full-time job, raising funds for nonprofit organizations, which is still very much a part of who I am. And I have a heart for helping causes that way. And I always will. But yeah, just to kind of give you a few other little nuggets about me. I consider myself an introvert. I love Jesus and black coffee and personality typing tests. So if you love talking about Myers-Briggs or Enneagram, come find me and I will chat about it with you all day long. But yeah, so that's kind of, what got me to this point in the journey. So I'll start you back with my first child, who, like I said, will be almost 5. Her birthday is in February. And that was really the pivotal point for me where things just changed dramatically. And for me as a first-time mom, I'm an only child. I don't have a lot of, I wasn't the go-to for babysitters. I didn't have a lot of experience with children. I always knew I wanted to have kids. I love kids. But as far as, getting in there, getting your hands dirty and what it's really like, I didn't have very realistic expectations, I don't think. And a lot of my friends who I was surrounded with and supported by at the same time, we were all having kids at the same time, first children at the same time. And so it was an odd place to be
Yeah.
honest with you, because you need someone in your support group to be at a different phase of motherhood so that they can, be that support for you or take the time to go run, get groceries. But when you're all, all six of you are at home postpartum with newborns, it's like you have to kind of shift your support system, at least your friendship. I mean, you still have friends there, but you can't lean on them in the same way as you would if they were in a different phase of life. And that was just how it was. But my first child was, we had a lot of challenges early on. So Meredith, I didn't know you then, so I didn't have realistic expectations about baby sleep at all.
Most people don't. They don't.
Yes. So I went through she did not sleep well, and I thought I was doing something wrong. So that would put me in a spiral of, what am I doing wrong? Then when she would go down, I couldn't sleep. And there was that. And then we found out around 2 months at her 2-month checkup that she had a dairy protein allergy. She was not gaining weight like she needed to be. She was almost fallen off of the measurement, the percentile for children. And that tore me apart. As a mom, you hear, I mean, I think they even threw out the term failure to thrive, and I was crushed.
Wow.
It's like, yeah, it's like, what am I doing wrong? She's been suffering. I didn't even know this. So there was a lot of things happening, not just being a first-time mom. Everybody has different challenges, different things that happen, but I felt like there was a lot of additional things that I didn't even know could be possible.
Right.
I didn't know about dairy protein allergies until she was diagnosed. I didn't have realistic sleep expectations for newborns. I was of the mindset, I still am very strong and independent. And so a lot of it I tried to do by myself. I tried to bear the weight and say, this is just how it is. It's just hard, and I'm going to make it work no matter how much it wears me down. This is what moms do, right? Like, this is, and it made me think, why do people have more kids if it's like this? So now looking back, I realize some of those things were flags for other issues. No, I did not know what I know now. Of course, we can get into that. But my daughter, I love her so much. She is a wonderful, smart, funny girl, but we together had lots of challenges figuring out motherhood together early on. And that was honestly what sparked wanting to do the podcast. It was a year after she was born. It honestly took me, Meredith, a year, and I've said this before, to kind of feel like I came out of the fog. Just, it didn't feel like myself, but I didn't really know why. And even at those checkups where you go and you do the postpartum check-in with your pediatrician, really is where you fill out the forms. I feel like I knew what to say, but I didn't honestly really believe it myself. I'm like, oh, I'm doing fine. I don't cry for no reason. No, I don't do that. Knowing good and well there's an issue there. And I think a lot of women run into that because there still is that stigma of, if you have this mental health issue, you're not a good mom, or they're gonna do something to, take away your kid or something. And so it's a defense mechanism, but it doesn't serve us well, because mental health is health. And I know that now through a lot of talking to really smart moms and just learning more about mental health and perinatal mental health. And that, I think, that was pivotal for me wanting to help other moms. And I tell this story of the nipple cream the nipple cream story, where I what for me, I was not talking to other moms. I just was kind of suffering in silence with all this stuff going on. And, you know, comparatively, we had it great. On the outside, things were good, but I was not happy. I did not feel like myself. And I was having these breastfeeding issues. Just I had mastitis. She wasn't latching. And then of course we realized she had this dairy protein allergy. And so not knowing who else to really turn to, I talked to this one mom at church who I had probably had conversations with maybe 2 or 3 times before. And her son is a little bit older than my daughter. And I just kind of spilled my guts. I was like, I am having all these breastfeeding issues. My nipples hurt. She's not feeding. Like, what do I do? And I thought, oh my gosh, this mom is going to think I'm crazy. Like, she's going to say, well, you're doing this all wrong. I don't know what you're doing, but you have no idea. And she didn't say that. She did not at all. She said, I know exactly where you are. I was there too.
Mhm.
And, my son and I got through it. We figured it out, but I know exactly how you feel. And listen, I have this nipple cream that made a world of difference. And here is the name of it. And this is where you get it. And for me, and it sounds so funny. And I bawled. I was like, oh my gosh, because it was another mom who got it, another mom who was validating my feelings, and that I was not doing it wrong. I think that's really the purpose of the podcast, is to hear stories of real moms who go through, breastfeeding challenges, or trying to find mom friends, and, just realizing that there's a lot of challenges and you're not doing it wrong. These things that you're trying to navigate are just a part of your motherhood journey, and there's no shame in that. So that was a long-winded way to say that I had a lot of challenges with my first, but that really was such a fertile ground for learning and for where I am right now.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you went through so many things. And I think even the beginning part of your story, when you talk about trying to reinvent yourself as a mom with that long history, you knew who you were and you were confident. A lot of women will relate to that, but I definitely don't think that helped you be kind to yourself, give yourself grace. And yeah, you're right. There's having all your friends be at the same pace as you. But when you first said, I said that was good, because a lot of women feel alone. They are the only one having a baby, and all their friends are still in their careers, or their friends are way ahead and they can't get pregnant. And so my initial response was, oh, good, but you're right. That's a bad scenario.
I mean, and now it's wonderful because we all have our kids are around the same age. We can do play dates. We can talk about things that very much relate to where we are all at in life. But at that one point, when you are postpartum, especially with your first, it is an important phase of life where you need additional support. You need not just physical, but also emotional support. And that just was the situation for me. And I love my friends, and I know they needed the same thing that I had, but I wasn't able to give that to them either.
What I'm thinking, this role that you've taken on for yourself now is to be that voice. I love it. You're the voice for the moms who aren't getting enough support, which most of them aren't.
Yeah. And I think, part of that too is what I've learned going through this process and talking to other really smart moms on the podcast. This is not all just things that I came up with. This is not me. Um, is that we are not really taught, or there's not been a good opportunity for us to practice how to ask for help.
Right.
And I think that is such an important part of motherhood, for one, but that postpartum experience, that postpartum phase of your motherhood, that being able to know how to communicate that to people, that you how to ask for help and then how to receive that help is something that you think, oh, that, yeah, duh, right? But that is so much harder to actually practice. And I think a lot of people, I can only speak for myself in that part of my issue was that I felt that independence. I felt that I should be able to do this by myself. I know other moms that do this and I should be able to do this. And that's not how you should look at it. I mean, I think everybody has their own journey, but being able to say specifically to my husband, can you please go change, put the dishes in the dishwasher? Can you please watch the kids, like right now? Can you please watch the kids for an hour while I do this podcast? And I think that sounds so very practical and simple, but that has been a huge lesson that I learned just in becoming a mom, that I was not very good at expressing my own needs. I thought I was, but that was not happening. And when my expectations were not met, I had to think about, did I put that out there? Was some of this because I didn't ask or didn't effectively communicate that I needed this support? Or was it that I'm not receiving what I'm asking for?
Yeah.
So
Those are both
yeah.
really, really good points. I'm wondering if you did have experiences with the last few years, 5 years, right, where you had to ask for help besides your husband. Because I learned that being on bed rest with my second, having a 2-year-old running around on bed rest. I learned how to ask for help and accept it, and then feel really grateful and know that I wasn't a failure.
Yes. Yeah. Most of my parents thankfully live close now. When my first born, they were living part-time close to us and then part-time back in a different state, but they're close to us now. And I I have had to ask them for help many, many times. And I feel like every time I get better at understanding how to ask for help. And because I think, we say that the other thing is people are very different. They communicate very different. And so sometimes when you say something, that's not necessarily what people hear. And so there's also navigating that aspect of how do I ask this person in a way where they're going to understand my needs and, respect their needs as well. So my parents, yes, I've asked my parents, and I have asked friends for things before too. And it might be something simple like, hey, can you pick this up for me? I forgot it, when I went to the grocery store. Or, hey, I'm helping throw this birthday party. Can you bring the fruit? Or whatever it is, being able to just release some of those things, because we talked about control earlier on my podcast. But I think that's a huge area where releasing some of that control or perceived control with things is actually very freeing and allows people to feel valued, allows other people into your circle, and allows people to just help you. And that's a lot of times people want to feel like they can help you. They want to. So,
It
uh,
reminds me of how much our husbands need that. So I'm
yeah.
kind of going in a circle here because you talked about that a couple times now, but it's it's hard to do. Like, just having you describe asking someone to bring something to a shower made me think of how hard that is sometimes to let go of, I can do this all myself. I'm fine, right? But you're not, and you're not. And you don't want to put people out. But with your husband, that's a totally different dynamic because,
Right.
like you were saying earlier, you feel like you should be able to do all this.
Mhm.
And then we also tell ourselves that we do it right, the only way.
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
think and wish that our husbands could read our minds, and they can't, and they don't. And then we get
Right.
mad. So that's a whole nother dynamic of making sure we're careful in how we ask, making sure we ask, and letting them help so that their self-esteem grows. It builds your relationship, right? You
Yeah,
agree?
absolutely. 100%. And my husband has even said to me before, I'm not good at covering up when I'm feeling stressed. And so if I'm not asking for help and he sees that I'm stressed, he's told me, I feel when you are stressed. Let me help you. Like, let me take this off of you so that we can all feel less anxiety. I'll feel less stress about this and we can all take care of this together. Don't,
Awesome.
yeah, yeah. So I think sometimes we forget that we don't live in a silo. Like, other people are affected by our emotions as well. And if we don't sometimes do as good of a job as we think we do about covering it up or holding it in, which is not really healthy anyway for you, but you think you're doing them a service by keeping it all in when really that's not what's happening.
Right. Well, I am sure that you learned so much from that first child, and you had a nice, good long stretch where you had one kid, and but that was helpful to navigate one child at a time. Can you tell us about your second child, that whole situation and how it was different?
Yes, yes. It was very different, in a lot of ways, really. And the main thing, that I'll start off with is that I had baby number 2 in the middle of a pandemic. And that in itself was a very different experience than my first baby, not in a pandemic. There were a few, I had prepared myself mentally and we had made plans for childcare. We were getting a doula. We had talked through a lot of the logistics that we didn't with the first one because now we kind of know what to expect. And the fact that the pandemic happened changed threw a wrench, I'll say, in a couple of those plans.
Mhm.
First off, my parents were going to watch my daughter while my husband came to the hospital, and COVID situation made it pretty much impossible for that to happen. So we had no childcare for my daughter. And then the hospital told us we could only have one support person in the delivery room. So sorry, doula, husband's going to be in the room.
Oh my God.
So yeah, yeah. So no doula. And we had to figure out, what are we going to do with my daughter? And we're not going to leave her with someone she doesn't know. So, long story there, she ended up coming to the hospital with my husband. And um, after I got an epidural, I chose to get an epidural. They had to leave and they couldn't come back until the baby and I were ready to go home. So, fortunately, just blessing from God that both of us the baby and I were healthy. It was a normal delivery. And which was a little strange because it was just the nurses in the delivery room. My husband was not there. And they were just chit-chatting about, you know, casual small talk. And I'm delivering a baby, which was very strange. But they did take photos for me on my phone. So I do have some photos of the baby being born on my cell phone that we had. But really, the rest of it, outside of not getting visitors and not getting like real coffee and stuff, that it was lonely. It was a little lonely, but I felt very blessed that both of us were healthy and there were no other issues there. The tipping point for me that made it so hard was that we were getting ready to leave. We're getting ready to come home. My husband was on the way to the hospital And the nurse comes in and says that my son's bilirubin was too high. And so we had to stay an extra night. He was under the light, and I was crushed. Like I wanted to go home and see my husband and my daughter. And we had to stay there another night by ourselves. And one of the sweet nurses, this is the pandemic and they're in there with their masks. And she's like, I'm going to break the rules. And she gave me a hug. And I was like, that's what I needed. But it was that part of it made me realize how different it was in that moment. And I feel for a lot of first-time moms who have that experience, because that is a whole nother layer of kind of processing mentally and having to navigate those things that normally are not there for you. So all that to say, thank goodness that my baby, Henry's my son, he's very different postpartum experience once I got home than my first. And I had a lot, I knew kind of what things could look like. He's not going to sleep very much. Yeah. It's okay if he sleeps with me for a little bit. I knew how to ask my husband for help and say, hey, I just need an hour nap. Can you please just watch them? And luckily, Henry did really great with breastfeeding. And I knew who to talk to if things seemed like they were off. And I just, I knew the signs to look for. I knew if I were to start to feel off again, I knew what some things that kind of triggered me were. And we talked about this before, Meredith, but I feel like I had some tools in my toolbox in terms of like mental health and physical health too. It just gave myself a lot more grace to time to heal, asking for help, a lot of those things that I did not allow myself to do with the first one. And it made such a difference. I feel like I could actually enjoy that postpartum experience with my son and also with my daughter. Now my daughter is here, obviously my 5-year-old. So I could enjoy that time with her as well and not feel just in my head about things or super anxious. And there's times where I catch myself, where I start to feel anxious or where I know I need some sleep or I need to just step outside and take a deep breath. But I now know that some of those things are very normal and what I can do to help me manage that instead of feeling like something is wrong, I'm doing this wrong, I'm a failure, those kind of things. So it's been totally different. And a lot of that I attribute to experience from the first one and also just from allowing myself to be vulnerable with other moms and learning from their experiences too. And that is a huge part of what the podcast has done for me personally. And I hope that it does for other moms as well. So that it kind of comes, like you said, full circle. But
And
it's been so interesting. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you more about the podcast. And so that was a really good lead into that. Just what a blessing. When you started it, was it more because you wanted to help these moms and help their experience having their first child be better and teach them about postpartum disorders?
Mhm.
And then it led to be a blessing to you because of all the learning. You want to tell us more about that?
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's one of those things. So it kind of ties into everything, but it really was for me when my daughter was 1 and I realized I kind of want to do something for myself. I really want to be able to pour back into moms in the way that some, moms have been pouring into me and feeling that I'm not alone. I know there's a lot of other podcasts out there that do that as well, but I wanted to be able to have a platform to share these stories that moms I know that have just amazing stories, who've overcome challenges, who have lots of just knowledge and lessons to share that I want them to be able to share. And I also felt like I wanted to do something for me. I felt led, I felt called. If you're a Christian, you understand when you feel God put something on your heart to do, it really is an act of obedience. And but I didn't anticipate all the blessings that I would get from doing it. Yeah, it's not only just kind of a learning process in terms of technology. I didn't know audio technology or anything about how to start a podcast when I started it. And that's very not not normal for me to just start something when I don't know. I am such the overthinker. I will research it to death and then do nothing. That's kind of my MO. But this, I decided it was worth doing badly. I know that sounds really awful, but it meant so much to me to just be obedient and just do it, that if it wasn't great starting out, so what? I'm gonna do it. And like I said, it's been such a huge blessing meeting these moms that I have been able to meet and being able to share their stories on this platform, and then being able to be creative and have this thing for myself, outside of being a mom, which I mean, we all have those pieces of ourselves. And when you become a mom, your priorities shift, but you still have these things, these passions, and it's totally normal to want to have something that's your own to do outside of being a mom also. And that's kind of what it was for me in the beginning. And even now, it's such a wonderful thing that I get to be able to do. And I don't get to do this. The only reason I get to do this is because I have support. So I credit my husband for that as well. It's, you have to have people around you that support you and will push you and encourage you to do those things. So that's really how and why I get to do the podcast.
What was the moment when you knew the name? Because I think the name of your podcast is very significant. I love it.
Yeah, so that's actually a really funny story. My husband and I were driving a trip to see our friends. So we live in Tennessee. We were driving to Georgia to see our friends. And I was just talking. He's an entrepreneur. He's very creative. He's always got marketing ideas. And I was telling him about the podcast idea. And he said, "Okay, well, what's the purpose of it? What are these moms going through? What do you want to be able to give to them?" And I was like, you know what? I love when moms help each other, and we're all in this mom journey together, and it's just like when your friend down the street knows that you just had a baby, and you just really wanted a hot coffee, and so she brings by a coffee and puts it on your porch, and she's like, "You know what? I got you, mama." Or if you forget something for the school bake sale and your mom friend who is an avid baker, you call her up and she's like, "Don't worry, I'm going to cook this for you. I will bring you the cupcakes. I got you, mama." Like just the things that we do that support each other. And that was the nipple cream story is my gotcha mama story. And I have so many other stories of moms that have had my back, but that was the nipple cream story was kind of the spark for me that she had my back. She's like, "You know what? I thought she was going to tell me how awful I was as a mom." And she said, "No, girl, I got you, mama. You need this nipple cream. It's going to be okay. Like, this is just a phase. I'm on the other side of it. I know how it is." And that's really what it's about.
I love that. She made me emotional. So perfect. So cute. And Amanda asked me, we did a podcast for her earlier today, and she asked me to think about that. And oh, the list was so long. At first, it was like, oh my gosh, I have these beautiful angel friends. I'm so grateful. She asked me to think of one, and I thought of this one friend who had helped me my entire motherhood journey. And one of the little things that she gave me was just letting me in her home to see what real life was like with 3 kids. I went home from her house feeling like I was normal and messes were okay and crazy was fine and my microwave could be messy. It was okay. Like so it's really neat how even if we back each other up and we support each other just through being friends, how powerful that can be. But friendship is golden, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, that right there, sharing the realities of motherhood, that's a gift. I mean, that just your friend saying, you know what, this is the way it is, and you're welcome in my home. It's a disaster. That's a gift, you know? So I think don't discredit those little things because that makes all the difference.
Wonderful. Thank you. You've shared so many wonderful pieces of advice today. I'm excited. I loved it. Before we wrap this up, I just want to ask you if there's anyone in your life that has really inspired you besides the nipple cream story, or is there anyone that you turn to when you really need motivation or strength? We'll let you do a shout out too if you want.
Oh gosh, I you put me on the spot here because I don't know if I could name just one person. And I don't say that to be like, "Oh, I've got so many friends," but I just feel like there have been so many people in little ways, in
Yeah.
different seasons, in different phases of life who have been support for me, and they may not have even known, yeah, the friend you have that just allowed you to come in and see what real life was like, with 3 kids. I mean, little things like that. And I'm gonna have to go back to my husband and say he has been such an encourager and supporter for me, and that the growth in our marriage, because let's be really real, marriage with small kids is hard. It is hard. And for somebody to tell you that it's not, they are lying or they're lying. I mean, that so that I just really appreciate his patience with me and his encouragement and his support, to be honest, in all the ways that he does. Yeah.
Thank you. I totally admire your husband just from the stories you've told. Happy for you. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
That relationship can make it or break it, honestly. Motherhood and
It's
having a
hard.
little one.
Yeah. And I know lots of moms who really struggle with that. And there's phases. You may be in a really good season of your marriage and then there may come a tough one. And it just constantly working on your marriage. And I have to put a plug in for Michelle Perta, who is a marriage coach, and she's been on my podcast, and she was dropping gold nuggets about marriage and relationship left and right. And I keep going back to things that she's said, and it's so good. And I highly recommend Michelle to anyone who is thinking about getting any kind of guidance with their relationship while they have kids, because it is so important.
Well, there's a lot for us to learn from what you've said. One of the questions I would ask you is what picks you up, what lifts you, what motivates you. But I think that your podcast has done
Yeah.
that for you and all the lessons and all the people you've met, right? So
Yeah.
where can we find your podcast?
Yes, you can find my podcast, Gotcha Mama Podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, pretty much anywhere that you like to listen to your podcast, you can find my podcast. And you can find me on Instagram. I like to hang out there at Gotcha Mama. And the website is gotchamama.com. You can always find more information there. But yeah, I would love to connect with you. And I'm so excited that I found you, Meredith, in that Facebook group. Sometimes I will drop into various mom Facebook groups and find really awesome people to connect with.
Thank you. I'm so glad you came today. I'm so glad that you spoke with us and shared your story. And I love the plug for moms finding ways to feel good about themselves, find hobbies, interests, right? You took on a big challenge, but I know that you faced it one little thing at a time.
Oh,
You, you
yeah.
you've accomplished something huge. How long have you been doing it?
It's a year and a half, and I am, let's see, I just this week released 70 episode 74. So have, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's great. but it's work, and it's been a learning, like you said, every little step. And I didn't jump in with this awesome, perfect podcast, and it's still not awesome and perfect. There's always room to grow, but that's part of what I really love about it. So, yeah, I encourage you, if you are interested in, if you feel the tug on your heart, like there is something that you want to do and you're just not sure how to start, just take one little step at a time and just take some action. Because I've said this many times, and Meredith, you will, when I get in there and do my training in your membership, imperfect action is what will lead you to more clarity. So even if you feel like this is so messy and I don't know what to do, just doing something will give you more clarity.
That's wonderful. I think we could just listen to you forever. It's
Oh,
it's
please
hard
don't.
to, hard to end this. But yes, I'm so excited. Amanda's going to be teaching in my membership site. So mamas get to hear from her this coming week. Yay.
Yeah.
It's going to be wonderful to have you continue to teach me. I'm so lucky. So guys, don't forget to check out Amanda's podcast, Gotcha Mama. And it sounds like it's easy to find you, but yes, we'll make sure that you can find her. You have those links and everything. Thank you for spending time with us. I hope you guys took something away that inspired you and that you have a wonderful, blessed week. So thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Sweet Slumber Podcast, the good, the bad, and the sleep deprived. If you enjoyed the show today, please take a moment to write a review, leave a rating, and subscribe so you won't miss future episodes. This will also help more mothers find my show. Thanks for listening.